Could we see co-op between Link and Zelda in Breath of the Wild 2? She did. Well, it finally happened. After 2 years of silence from Aonuma and his team, we finally got ourselves a new Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, and everyone lost their mind. Not me though, I kept it cool.
It's in the sky!
Even though the trailer itself was only about 1.5 minutes long, there's quite a lot of stuff to analyze and speculate about, and ideas are already running rampant. Instead of doing one big analysis of the trailer in its entirety, I've decided I'm gonna do things a bit differently. First off, you can bet your sweet bokoblin horn that everybody and their mother will have a full analysis up before I'm done thinking about what this tree in the background means. I'm also still in the middle of moving house, so I gotta spread my efforts out a little bit to keep my sanity. So what I'll be doing instead is I will upload multiple shorter videos covering the new sequel trailer where we focus on one specific thing at a time. This way I can go more in depth and keep the runtime at a manageable length until I'm ready for the bigger projects again. Today we will be looking at some of the new architecture seen in the presentation, which there is quite a lot of actually. We'll talk about the overall aesthetics, its connection to other tribes that may or may not start with a Z, as well as where they could have come from, since none of the structures seen here were present on the surface in Breath of the Wild. So let's dive right in. To start off, let's list all the new architecture chronologically as seen in the trailer. The first one I was able to spot was the shot where the sky is first introduced. And I'm not talking about the island Link seems to be aiming for. We do see some road-like structure on the surface of the island, but given the distance, it's hard to say if these are new. There were definitely paved roads in specific sections of Breath of the Wild's map as well. But as the camera pans upwards closer to Link, we can see what seems to be a large floating building in the distance. Because of the clouds, we can only see the very top of it. However, in the very next shot we see a similar looking structure on the top right of the frame, which is possibly the very same building from a different vantage point. We can also see some additional smaller constructions on the islands right here. These in turn look like they might be of the same type as the one from the next shot, which is, in my opinion, the most beautiful looking one in the entire trailer. We can see two things, some man-made walls and some sort of archway, which kind of reminds me of a Japanese torii gate. The next scene is where we get a first, more detailed look at one of the new buildings, but we'll go over the actual details later. Next we have the shot of Link flying past a bunch of bokoblins riding a stone talus, which is amazing, by the way. In the first few frames, however, we can see some small details on the left of the frame. Now, this building right here looks like the ruins we are familiar with. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is Lon Lon Ranch, since we can also see a small section of Castletown right here. But these two pieces of debris right here don't look familiar at all. The shape clearly shows that it is man-made, but these were definitely not in Breath of the Wild. They seem to originate from the same type of walls we saw in the sky, which leads me to believe that these might be pieces that have broken off when the islands rose to the sky and then landed in Hyrule Field. Next we have the close-up of the green hand, and although it doesn't show an actual building, we do see that Link is laying on a piece of floor with a circular shape to it and is decorated with an unknown scripture. Again, more details later. In the part where Link uses his new stasis time manipulation thingy, we can see some new types of enemy camps. They definitely don't look like any of the camps we saw in Breath of the Wild. Also, moblins wear hats now, so that's pretty neat, I would say. Then we come to the first indication that despite all the sky footage, there are some underground sections as well. Who knows, this might even be a dungeon. Here's hoping. This cave-like area also has man-made features. Walls and pillars and some sort of altar, which I'm guessing might spawn a chest once the enemy is defeated. Then we have what is probably the most detailed view of one of the new types of architecture in the game. We can see floor tiles, a sort of pillar with a pinecone shape on it, and a stone stairway leading to a platform with a roof on it. I'm also guessing that this might be the same or at least a similar area as the shot with the new robot enemy. Here too you can see the stairs, a similar looking building, as well as the pinecone thing in the background. We can also spot some similar stone buildings on some of the other islands in the distance. And those are all the shots featuring new architecture. There might be even more in the final shot of the castle rising, but with the lighting and the distance it's hard to see the finer details, and thus it's hard to say if they are existing ruins or not. So that sums up all the new buildings. Now let's go over some of the finer details. The first thing to mention is that it's safe to say that with the exception of the new enemy camps, they seem to have been made by the same people, as they all have similar features. They all have similar looking pillars, which start out thin at the bottom and get wider at the top. Even the walls inside the cave-like area have this trait. They are also all made from the same grayish looking stonework. Some of the stonework also has some sort of writing on it which doesn't match with any of the established alphabets from previous games, which brings us to the symbols seen in the close-up of the green hand. At first I thought they were Gerudo scripture, but when you pull up the Gerudo alphabet they are definitely not the same. The only one that kinda looks like a Gerudo symbol is this one right here, which bears some resemblance to the A or E, but even this is not a complete match. Whatever this language is, it probably has something to do with the tribe that built these structures. Furthermore, a lot of the small buildings we see on the various floating islands have the same open design. That is to say, a floor with pillars and a roof, but no walls. In the shot where we see one of them up close, we can also see some sort of stone altar. Perhaps these will serve as this game's variant of fast travel points, seeing as there's no trace of any of the Sheikah shrines or towers anywhere in Hyrule's landscape. This could mean that once you visit an island, you can easily travel back there in the future. The only building that sticks out from the rest is the big one in the first two shots we covered. It still seems to have the same grey stonework, but it's much bigger and does seem to have closed walls. At the same time, it also has the same feature where it gets wider at the top. I'm really hoping that this might be one of the game's dungeons. Who knows, maybe the shot inside that enclosed space where Link is using his new flamethrower ability might be inside this building. Now, the big questions remain. Who built these structures and how did they get here? I mean, they certainly weren't there in Breath of the Wild. Obviously, the Zonai would be a prime candidate once again, but there is, however, one issue. As elusive as the Zonai are, their architecture is the one thing we do know quite a lot about, and none of the buildings seen in the new trailer are unmistakably of Zonai origin. Yes, they do have some similar features, such as the swervy, teeth-like decorations and blocky design best seen on the Sargon Bridge, but it's just different enough that we can't say with certainty that these are Zonai made. There's no trace of the recognizable spiral, the snake engravings, or other ornaments on some of the walls and statues. Now, it could be that they decided to alter Zonai architecture for this game. Plus, we've only seen a few buildings in ruins so far. Maybe there are more out there that do feature the Zonai characteristics we are familiar with. I am quite certain that this is not ancient Hylian. The ruins we find of them are much more in line with Roman building styles, such as round pillars and smooth archways. This new building style is way too blocky compared to that, and as opposed to Zonai architecture, which does have some resemblances, there are no features that match with ancient Hylian. I will do a more in-depth video about the Zonai connections in a later video, as there are definitely some besides the architecture. Finally, we have the question of how in the heck did these buildings suddenly appear in the first place? Like I said, they were definitely not there in Breath of the Wild. I don't have any definitive answers, obviously, but there are two options that came to my mind and could explain it best. The first and most talked about option right now is that the parts where we see Link traversing the skies takes place in the past. Far, far in the past, as a matter of fact. Say these buildings are indeed of Zonai origin. We could be looking at an ancient version of Hyrule, which of course would mean that time travel is back once again. And this is definitely a possibility. In fact, there are quite a few time-related hints all throughout the trailer. We see time manipulation abilities, specifically a theme of reversing time. Then there's the fact that Link is wearing some very old-school looking clothing in some of the shots. They kinda remind me of Roman or ancient Greek, with the toga that only covers one shoulder and the open sandals. In every shot where Link is in the sky, he is wearing that same green attire on his upper body, whereas on the surface, he is always seen donning the tunic we recognize from the first trailer. In general, Hyrule looks different. Some, like Masked Nintendo Bandit, have already pointed out some missing buildings that were there in the previous game but are gone now, indicating that this might take place in an era before these were built. So yeah, this could very well be taking place far in the past. But there is a second option, and that is that the floating islands we see are not pieces of Hyrule's surface from Breath of the Wild, but instead new landmasses that have perhaps always existed far above the clouds. Just because we see Hyrule Castle rising doesn't automatically mean that the rest of Hyrule will do so as well. Yes, I did suggest this in my video last week, but that was just a suggestion, that doesn't mean it's true. In fact, even after hours of scrutinizing the trailer, I have yet to see anything on the floating islands that I recognize as something I know from the surface. We also don't see any craters on the surface from above, at least not right now anyway. And even in terms of the castle, who's to say it will rise up as high as the clouds? In the final shot, it seems to have stopped moving and is just floating there. Maybe this is the extent of it. It will just stay there like this, surrounded by malice, a bit like Ganon's castle from Ocarina of Time. And that about covers the architecture for now. I hope to see you in the next episode, where I will go more in depth on other aspects of the new trailer. The next part will be released very soon. And if you have your own ideas and findings, don't shy away from sharing them down in the comments. I might even use them in a a future episode. A big thanks to everyone for the amazing E3 livestream, to my friends Charlie and Mike for being there with me, and the amazing presents I got from you guys. And lastly, thank you to my ever so gracious Patreons and members, and to Arno Den Boef, Fumekage Tokoyami, Andre Lekchilin, Michael Egger, and an additional shout out to Shigeyako for upgrading their pledge. You are all amazing as always. And that is all for now. This is Don signing off, and
It's in the sky!